All right. Welcome, everyone. We're back to another webinar from Tack Insider. It's super excited to be here. For those that are joining, whether you're live, whether you're listening on demand, we have an exciting one today. And so I'll let Kris, who's joining us today from Sendoso, introduce himself in a second. But a couple quick housekeeping items. If you have any questions, we like to make this casual, informal. Like this isn't like Kris talking to all of us saying that like what he says is, the word, but we want to make this conversational. If you do have questions, drop it in the chat, drop it in the Q&A. I'll look at both of those, either or, it doesn't matter to me. Um, but outside of that, we want to make this educational. We want to make this informative for people. We want to hopefully educate and add value into your lives because you could be spending your time anywhere and you're spending it with us. So we're incredibly grateful for that. So a little bit of background about myself. So I actually come from the gifting and direct mail space. I was at Alice for 2 years. And it was great to see when Sendoso acquired Alice. I feel like it's been forever now. It's only been a couple of months, but yeah, it's been really great. I'm a huge believer of direct mail and gifting. As a field marketer, it was something I used a lot within my strategy. Every company that I've worked for has used direct mail and gifting as part of a larger strategy. So excited for this one. I'm going to turn it over to Kris. I'm going to let Kris do a quick introduction of himself, and then I'll let him get into it. But again, if you have any questions, drop it into the chat, drop it into the Q&A, and let's get things going.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen, and then I will try to look out for chats and questions as we go, and then save some time for the end as well. But let's keep this collaborative. I have some slides to show just to keep us on track, though. So let's get my screen share going, and let's get the slides up, and let's go. Oh, little. All right. So, sorry. Let me tell my dog to get out of here. I'm sorry, Nick.
No worries. Cool. And appreciate Matt already dropping a question in there. I'll make sure that we get to that. And just
Sorry.
Kris, right before you kick things off, right after your intro or wherever you want, Matt did drop a question in the Q&A, which was a good one. So if you want to get to that at some point, either before or during, whatever, totally up to you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll save it to the end because I think this will add some interesting ideas and answer some of your questions as we go. And then we'll get into the guidelines and some of my thoughts on that too. Um, all right, so a little bit about me personally. So I started Sendoso about 7 years ago. Prior to that, I spent about a decade in software sales myself. So I was in the trenches, booking calls, closing deals, and I really saw firsthand the power of gifting as a way to build rapport with customers, to break into new accounts, cut through the noise. But it was a very manual process. And so when I came up with the concept for Sendoso, I wanted to streamline the operational efforts behind the scenes to make it so much easier to use gifting as a channel that originally was meant for salespeople, but now sales, marketing, HR, customer success, the list goes on and on. A little bit about me personally, though, and this is going to be a tie-in throughout the presentation because I think personal interests and hobbies tie into what people like when they receive gifts. But I'm based out of the San Francisco Bay Area, born and raised, grew up just about an hour north of San Francisco, went to college a couple hours north of San Francisco, just never left. Love it here. That is our chief barking officer, Stella. Actually, she barked already in this call. She sits by my side throughout the day. When I go in the office, she will follow me into the office, and she was our office puppy for a couple years, about 5 years ago. And then I love golf. It's one of my favorite hobbies. So if I'm not talking about gifting, I run in the business, I'm out on the golf course. So in terms of the agenda for today, first, I'll give a quick background on Sendoso. If you don't know about us, it gives it some context in terms of like why this category exists, why I created Sendoso. Then I want to talk about the impact of AI on gifting, and I think this is an incredibly important topic as that relates to really this framework for people first gifting. Then I have some examples of kind of the old way of outbounding and then the future of outbounding, and these are two tactical examples that Sendoso uses and how we morphed our outbound strategy with some modern tech stack tooling, and how we incorporated gifting into it too. So that should be a kind of an interesting tangent away from just pure gifting to talk about general outbounding. And then we'll save time for Q&A. If I don't answer these questions throughout the conversation. Then we'll have some time at the end. And Nick, keep me honest if I'm running too long. All right. So the kind of preface for all of this is that people buy from people. That's been kind of my tagline in the back of my head since day zero. I love this is the people first community. This is right in line with how I think about the sales and buying process. And at the end of the day, deals are won or lost from the people that you're interacting with. And so, what better way to build rapport and selling by using gifting. And so this is really at its core, creating positive emotional brand associations. There's legitimate psychology behind gifting and why it works, and the benefits of using it in sales processes. Again, it also is a great way to build prospect and customer relationships, gives a personal experience. And then at the end of the day, everyone is here probably to drive revenue. I know that's why I created Sendoso, and it works for that purpose. What I wanted to highlight is kind of the how it or why it was hard prior to using a platform like Sendoso, and in some of the ways that we've streamlined that. So when I was running before running Sendoso, when I was in sales, marketing would tell me, hey, it's Friday, it's noon, start helping us with gifting. So we would be, writing notes, we'd be packing boxes, we'd be shipping things out. And while that can work, it's just incredibly hard to scale. And so, I think if you haven't done gifting yet at any scale, maybe avoid the headaches and look at a platform. Otherwise, you could be stuck in this, multi-hour execution, and that could deter you a little bit from doing more of it. But which is really why we invented this category. And then just at a high level, kind of the 5 key pillars: AI and data personalization, a global marketplace, worldwide fulfillment. The enterprise integrations are key. So thinking about how it integrates into your CRM, your tech stack, and then having custom branding tools to make gifting better. And then I think this is
Sorry, I was gonna say I don't think your screen's stuck on the title screen. I wasn't sure if you were.
uh, I was sharing, so thank you for that.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. People buy from people, a little bit about gifting matters. Sorry about that. Must have paused it when I jumped up. And 5 pillars. And then we'll kick back in. So I think it's thank you, Nick, for keeping me honest there. I wouldn't have ever known. I would have got to the end and been like, whoa, there's no slides. Um, but at its core, I think this is kind of an obvious underlying thesis in that people are inundated with a ton of emails, a ton of ads, a ton of cold outreach. But people still aren't getting a lot of gifts and direct mail. The average household only gets a couple pieces of mail. The open rate on gifts and mail is like a gazillion times more than email. And then as part of an integrated campaign where you integrate email plus ads plus gifting, you'll see a big boost there too. So I think that's just an underlying truth right now. But let's talk about people first gifting and right message, right gift, right time, right person, right delivery channel. I think if you can nail all 5 of those, you're guaranteed success. And I think this goes back to the question on kind of guidelines and framework. This is a really interesting way that we think about the framework for personalized gifting. And I'll talk about some other, ways that we think about gifting in general of like that are in conjunction with this. But for the most part, if you can nail these 5 things, or you can nail it with the help of a tool, you'll be that much more likely to drive conversion. And really, that's why AI, I think, works really well in gifting, because one, it can help with increased conversions, and two, it increases productivity, so it makes it easier to do more gifting at scale. And I think, when I think about AI, everyone talks about AI, but why AI for gifting? One is AI is great at analyzing like a billion data points and figuring out things. It's also amazing at writing messaging. And then it's also great at this decision engine and recommendation engine. And so those 3 things bode really well for gifting. I think the big thing is AI doesn't replace human interactions. And so it's an assist for AI. We like to talk about AI enhanced gifting, not AI gifting. I know it's a small nomenclature, but it's really important to not remove the human from the process. And then really, it's not just chatting to get gifts. It's a whole different way to think about it. There is a really interesting flywheel effect that we've seen, and this is also beneficial from the acquisition of Alice. It drove us to want to acquire the data set that was behind Alice, and it's also allowed us to combine our data sets to have a really rich amount of personalization. And this flywheel works by the more gifting that happens, the more data we see, the more gifting recommendations and better recommendations we can give. That satisfies more recipients and then more pipeline for the senders. And that's just a flywheel that keeps on going and going and going. And is incredibly interesting. We've seen about 250 million spent on our platform. That'll soon be in the billions of dollars. And all of that network effect lends itself well to anybody that's going to gift tomorrow is going to have, a decade worth of gifting data at their fingertips. So back to this framework, I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit by what I mean by each of these, and then also how AI and also some of the stuff that Sendoso has been working on for the last decade will help you if you're like, well, how do I come up with the right message? Or when is the right time? Or what do you mean by delivery channel? So I think this will be helpful in thinking about kind of the people first approach. So first off, the right message. This is, I think, the most no-brainer AI functionality. We have a ability to write personalized notes or e-gift notes tailored to the recipient based on all the recipient data. We call it Pun Pal because it's kind of a fun name. But the nice thing about this is it takes into account the reason why you're sending the gift, the person you're sending the gift to, the company, and all these different assets to craft that note for you or craft multiple notes for you. So this is helpful in terms of productivity and then ultimately getting a response from that gift. We also are layering on localization and campaign translation. So this is helpful if maybe you're in a region like in Europe where you manage a larger territory of countries in different languages and want us to do the heavy lifting there. The next thing is suggesting the right gift to your recipients based on the person's interests, their persona, their location, etc. And this is where Smart Send comes in. And the interesting thing about this is you can go very, very laser focused. Like Kris likes golfing and knows that it's going to suggest a gifting gift or a golf gift. That's incredibly personalized. And if you send me a golf gift, I will 100% respond. Now, there's also one level above that. Like, hey, I know Kris is in California. I know he's a CEO. I know he's in this industry. So we can make suggestions there. An example I like to point out, like if you are sending a gift for Starbucks, that's much more likely to hit home to me in California than to someone in Boston who is a Dunkin' fan. And so that's something that we can take into effect. And those like might be less obvious to some salesperson in Arizona that has a whole country as their territory and is really thinking about how do I send gifts based on certain regions. The right time, and we'll get into this a bit later in the presentation too, is how do you use intent and signals to automate personalization? And I think this is the big aha moment in gifting right now is, for the last handful of years, companies have been amassing a lot of interesting intent data, or they've been bought into all these intent data sources, and they're like, great, someone went to my website, or great, someone's got trending purchase intent based on these intent data providers like Bombora or their 6QA score from 6sense is trending. Like, cool, now what? And part of that now what could be the right time to send a gift to break into that account. We also are incorporating that into our platform. So you can have these kind of suggestions and these signals based on intent data. So this is something we're building in that is going to be a really powerful way to have this queue of what you should send based on some intent data. The next thing is the right person. And so sometimes the right person is obvious. Like, hey, this person's just requested a demo, or hey, this is a target account and we target VPs of IT, so I know who to go after. But there's oftentimes ways that we can go ahead and find other individuals within your accounts and suggest gifts that you haven't gifted to yet. And this is for more complex enterprise sales where there's a larger buying committee. You might have thought, hey, I already sent something to my champion, but hey, you need to make other champions or you need to influence the executive decision makers. And this is where we can come in with the right person too. And then The other area here with automations is how do we make this more automated and in a queue so that you're less thinking about those other people that might be a part of the buying committee or basically making this more of an automated turn on and always on type of gifting program instead of something that's a click and send or an upload and send. And then the last thing that I think is really interesting and has evolved in the last 5 years is the right delivery channel. And so what do I mean by this is, do you send an email to the recipient saying, hey, I have a gift for you, confirm your address? Or, hey, I have a gift for you, do you want to swap it out? Or, hey, do you just send them to their office, the gift? Or do you send the gift to their home and you hope for this surprise and delight moment? And this has been a moving target. As everyone went home through COVID, it was obvious most everyone was at home, depending on what industry you're selling into. And then people started to trickle back in the office. And so we're building some really interesting technology right now based on all this data, which is saying, hey, don't use an address confirmation. Don't ask them. Actually, just use this smart delivery functionality that will pick the right delivery channel, whether that's email or SMS, whether that's straight to their house or straight to their office. And I think this is a big unlock because a lot of gifting works better when it's that surprise and delight moment than always asking for permission. All right, a lot about gifting. Now let's pivot a bit to the outbound process and the old way. And the old way, I think is still the way that a lot of people are doing it today. So I'm not necessarily hounding this as a bad way. This is, I'll asterisk this. This is my opinion and Sendoso's opinion, and how we've evolved. But I think this still can work for a lot of people. But I'll give you a couple examples. So right now, Sendoso attends an event. We received the lead list. We scrubbed the list to remove leads who booked with an AE, maybe DQ'd them. We drop the remaining leads into an outreach sequence. We have a step in that sequence that includes the gift, and we rinse, dry, repeat for all the events we do. The other scenario or example that I'll show as the old way and the new way is targeting based on territory or title. And this is pretty common. So you put together a list of lookalike prospects. Hey, these look like our ICP. These look like other customers that have closed with us. You enrich it in bulk or via copy paste. You scrub the lists. You drop them into an outreach sequence. You include a gift, and then you do this constantly. So I think this has been the norm for the last decade. And let me show you the way that we've switched our more programmatic scaled outbound and how it's working for us and why this is generating like 10 times more meetings than it has in the past and how gifting plays into this with intent, which is the key. So right now, our shift has focused into more of a signal-based outbound approach. And to do so, we focus on a bunch of different signals. It could be Bad Kudu, 6sense, Mobily, user gems. There's also some first-party signals we see in our CRM. There's a few other signal providers on here that we're testing that are related to web leads, that are other intent signals like Bombora that are piped into our CRM. And then we have this team, and now you'll see this is a bit different than maybe your traditional BDR outbound team. So the first thing that you'll see is what the heck is a Clay table manager. This is something that we have. I'll get into what Clay is and why we use it. SDR is pretty common, although the SDR now for us is less of an outbound SDR and they're more of a inbox reply SDR. So they're all of the outbound components of crafting the message, waiting for the signal, doing all of the rules engine checking to see if they're a customer or not, cleaning the data, scrubbing the list, creating a really personalized email. That's all done in conjunction with the campaign engagement manager and the Clay table manager. And the SDR now is really more of a focus around engaging with these folks that are replying and showing intent based on outbound. So what we've done really is we streamlined the sales and marketing efforts. We've aggregated all of the data sources, and then we've created this really like scalable workflow. And this is all done through this tool Clay, which allowed us to really create this really unique flow, which is kind of spreadsheet-esque, but each column can be enriched with a set of rules engines. One of the things that I really like about this is this waterfall approach. And so previously we'd have a single data provider that would basically either allow our reps to go in and find the data and kind of insert it back into CRM or their sales engagement tool. Or it would allow the marketing team to run these like bulk exports based on ICP, or previously it would allow kind of a more of a auto enrichment based on accounts in our system. The problem is it was a single source of truth and a single source of failure. Now what we've done is we've incorporated this provider. I think there's 8 or so providers that we use for this waterfall approach, and this has been incredibly helpful so that there's either one, never a missed data source or a data piece. There's also never a world where we will cross-check. So instead of taking the phone number or the email as like, oh, that's got to work, it's the only one we have, we can say, hey, these two providers both have the same phone numbers, so we're going to assume that it's going to be true. Now what we do with Clay, and this is kind of in a more diagram folks, is we see which accounts have intent surge. This is all again all done through Clay. We enrich it automatically. We automatically are creating these personalized emails. We're automatically doing LinkedIn connections, and we're automatically setting tasks for phone calls based on engagement. And what I mean, what is different for this now for us is previously we'd have this target list and we'd say, okay, for email, phone, gift, phone, email, email, and you just go down the list like that. Now we're setting phone tasks based on click and engagement data on the other steps in that sequence. Whether they click twice in an email, then they get pushed up in the queue to be called first. If you haven't engaged with an email or a gift, we're not even going to call you yet because that's going to be a very, very cold call. And so that helps us prioritize our phone calls and moves them a bit from cold to warm. And again, it's a little bit out of queue because previously in the old way, you would just go down the list. If it was step 7, everyone in step 7 gets a call. Now we don't have this step-based approach anymore. So going way back to that example of, and I will show you a job change example. So when a job change happens, how do we affect that? So going back to the signal-based approach, and this was going back to here, where we look at certain signals. We see that signal in user gems. We then are able to, and then again, in Clay, that's orchestrating all this. We then check against Salesforce, Marketo. We're then validating the email through this waterfall approach in Clay. We're taking any account data that we have in Salesforce. We're using OpenAI, ChatGPT to personalize the note, and then we're also using Sendoso in this process. And then we execute on this campaign, sequence of emails, personal touches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We also have a really cool API into Clay, so you can orchestrate it and say, hey, this person's interest is baseball, coffee, cheese. And then there's the gift and the gift image associated with that you can also include in automated outbound as well. Next example is account intent surging. So again, we use 6sense for some of this, which is alerting customers, prospects, and other relevant audiences on 6 QA scores. And again, same thing, listening for this data, validating we have the right contact information, doing account research and cross-checking where they sit in our Salesforce, and then personalizing outreach, and bam. And then obviously the API for personalized gifting here. That's it. Hopefully that was a bit interesting in terms of the old way versus the new way. I'm going to stop sharing now and then hopefully opening it up to some questions.
Yeah.
Matt, was this helpful in terms of guidelines for incorporating giftings? Do you want me to go deeper on some other guidelines? Now that you saw some of this? All right. Good high level. How do you think about that one? Cool. So I think so first of all, when I'm gonna say we think about it as like how we tell our customers too. I think when you're thinking about using gifting in different programs, typically, it'll be dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. So if it's for a field event, if it's super top of funnel, trying to drive people in like meeting makers or top of funnel. Or it could be a program where you're trying to like wake the dead and you are helping stall pipeline. So depending on that, there'll probably be a different kind of workflow and approach to that. But at a high level, I think it's thinking about where in the process are you going to include gifting. If you're doing this manually, you have to think about what you're going to gift. If you're using a tool like Sendoso, you can get some of those suggestions taken care of for you. I think the other thing to think about is how are you going to segment your lists to figure out, hey, do you have a high target segment, like the intent example, that could be gifted something of more expensive value versus something else, lower value, depending on where they are. So I think those are all considerations when you think about guidelines for gifting. But I think at the end of the day, it's really thinking about what's the right gift, the right person, at the right time, the right message, and the right delivery channel.
Love that. Great advice. Kris, where can people, if people are listening, they have questions, they want to ask more, maybe some people I feel like, when these webinars, like they just don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
asking questions. Where can people find you?
Yeah. Find me on email, shoot me an email, add me on LinkedIn, send me a DM on LinkedIn. Um, yeah, I'd love to do one-on-one. If people want to chat with me for 15 minutes and pick my brain about something, I will even drop in my 15-minute Calendly. So love networking. So yeah.
Oh, it looks like there was another question that came in. Can you give some examples, some of your customers, companies that do gifting well and have seen results? Any cool stories of things you've seen?
Yeah, so tons of cool stories and for folks that do gifting really well. We have some of the uh, proof is in the examples, and so we have some really interesting success stories on our site. I think there's like 50 examples there that I'll link you to. There's also another example of I have this playbook right here, and here's how people are doing it in an integrated fashion. I'll give you these links so you can take them offline instead of just like a 2-minute blurb. And then customer. And then here's the last one here. I think what we do is so visual that sometimes me explaining the gift versus seeing them are super helpful. So actually, I think I
Yeah,
should.
you were putting it to host and panelists anyway, so I
Sorry.
just copied and pasted it
Thank
to,
you.
to
I was like, uh, okay, perfect. I think I also then didn't put in my Calendly or my,
Oh yeah, I think yep. There we go.
and then here's my LinkedIn. Keep me honest, Nick.
Yeah.
I
This
by default had me posting to the host and panelists instead of everyone.
See,
So
Zoom should fix that. I
I
feel like
know, I'm surprised. Uh,
yeah. Cool. Well, this was fantastic. These are all ways you can find Kris. Kris, thank you. Appreciate you spending some time with us. For everyone that's listening on demand, also you'll be able to find where you can find Kris. And yeah, if you have any questions for me as well, feel free to reach out. Happy to help any way I can. But other than that, oh, Paul, and there was one more question that came in. What would you suggest for incorporating direct mail into digital motions, non-gifting related, but as a unique touch point to help stand out in the competitive landscape?
incorporating direct mail into digital motions. That's not gifting related. Um, do you mean more of like postcards and like those types of direct mail or printed collateral? So are you asking more about like that type of direct mail? Um,
Yeah, printed
Yeah,
collateral.
perfect. I love this. And I think actually printed collateral in a lot of industries is kind of what's old is new again. So the way that I think about this is there's a couple different ways you can do it. One is um, we've seen some really interesting scenarios where companies have really great content. And with that content, they are creating like printed, like little mini magazines and offering web visitors, prospects, customers a quarterly option to subscribe to this really interesting content. And instead of right now having to read through like a 10-page PDF, you get that printed in your hands and on your desk that you can like look through. I think for a lot of folks, that's a really interesting medium that they miss. And if you're fatigued by looking at your screen all day, the next thing you want to do is read like a 20-page PDF, but it could be some really valuable content. So I think offering up to your web visitors or your buying process the option to subscribe to printed collateral is interesting. I think this could also be a touch point for sales, mentioning, hey, wanted to send you this, printed XYZ here. Let me know if I can send it over. I've seen some companies, even in their resources section of their website, have a call to action to say, want this delivered to your desk, put it in your address. And again, through an automation with HubSpot or Marketo or other web form builders, you can actually automatically trigger that through Sendoso, and it can go out. So you don't have to worry about like, oh no, I have to do this other process that I have to remember to send that stuff out. So I think that's interesting. Another piece to that could be, and this is one of our customers does this really well, is after you request a demo, as part of it, you confirm your address for this like demo packet. And in that is a printed case study. There's a couple other materials that get sent to you immediately when you request a demo. And one of our customers even has a workbook, which I thought was an interesting idea, which helps you really in this kind of discovery phase of this buying process, and it helps you map out your problems. I think it's an interactive exercise, and again, something that's on your desk that bodes well. Outside of that, other printed collateral, postcards can be interesting for long tail customer base or prospect base that have really SMB type customers. Could also be useful for like conferences and events because of the cost associated with it so low. And then that you could add an interactive QR code to drive people back to a digital experience. So that's really interesting. And then one thing that I like that's underutilized is video mailers. And so it's a booklet that could come in any shape. We've seen people create like a briefcase that opens up and a video plays. So it's kind of this hybrid printed collateral, printed direct mailer meets digital content. We've seen someone that has this like lunch bag that actually you take out this lunch bag and there's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that plays a video and talks about what goes better than PB&J. So video mailers, I put in this category of printed collateral direct mail that's not necessarily a gift, but is really interesting to grab someone's attention.
Great one. And then there was another question. How can ABM managers think about direct mail and gifting to enhance their motions and build unique experiences to highly target account-based motions?
Yeah, I think ABM, it was just perfect timing for kind of the gifting category to emerge when ABM emerged, because I think they go hand in hand, like peanut butter and jelly. And so I think it's, with ABM, you really are focusing on, quality over quantity. And with that, allowing you to really hone in on using gifting as a means to get into that buying committee. So I think it's a no-brainer step to incorporate into your outbound. We've seen some companies create hyper-targeted landing pages per account. And within that, there's a QR code that drives them through a gifting experience too. And so that's a really interesting way to incorporate targeted landing pages with gifting. We have a landing page builder built into Sendoso. And so we've seen some companies use that. So they build a landing page per company that they're targeting for account based. The landing page has some information and a call to action to put in your info to receive the gift. And it's a very engaging, very personalized experience on an account level.
Yeah, I was gonna say to piggyback off that. So when I was at Alice, I ran ABM. I built ABM from basically zero there. And so I did one-to-one landing page is for our top 50 accounts. And I had a personalized video on there, but I also had gifting built into the landing page that was able to see. And I think out of like the 50 accounts, we were able to open 60 of them in a quarter and a half. And I mean that resulted in, I think it was like 1 point something million in pipeline.
Love
And
that.
it was so simple because it was just a personalized landing experience. And it could have got better, but I was doing them all manually one by one, and it was a lot of work. So definitely a big fan of that. So cool. Looks like anyone else have any questions just before we wrap things up? Let's see. Cool. Love to hear that, Matt. All right. Well, I think that's it. You know where to find Kris. You know where to find me. Reach out if you guys have any questions and enjoy the rest of your day.
See you later.